Hey there, welcome to the Mr. Productivity Podcast. I got a great guest for you today. We're going to talk about the time-optimized life. But before we do, please head on over to my website, MrProductivity.com, M-I-S-T-E-R, MrProductivity.com. Sign up for my free email newsletter, The Productive Life. Get free training from me and weekly tips at MrProductivity.com. So David Buck is on the show today, and him and I hope I said the English right. Is it he and I or him and I? Doesn't really matter.
Go for it. Do what you need to do.
It's my show. I make my own English vocabulary as I go along. So Dave and I are not only good friends, we are actually mastermind buddies and accountability partners, and we're both in the productivity space. And I decided to have Dave on the show because I have not done an interview on the podcast since December of 2022. And I think it's about time I start getting back. And I said, hey, Dave, would you like to be my guinea pig? Would you like to be my guest on my show? And of course, being a true friend and mastermind buddy, he said, of course. So David, welcome back to the show. You've been on a couple times before, but this is going to be a standalone episode. So welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. As always, honor and a pleasure to talk to you in quote official capacity because we communicate a lot during the day via WhatsApp as we kind of check on each other and make sure that each other is following up and accounting. You're a great accountability partner to help me make sure that I'm doing what I need to do.
I just want to point out in the beginning of the show today, folks, if you don't have accountability partner, if you don't have a mastermind buddy, now a lot of times when people think of mastermind, they think of Napoleon Hill. You can just have a mastermind with another person, and what Dave and I do, we meet a couple times a month on Zoom, and we just share what I've tried and what I found worked and what didn't work. And Dave does the same thing. So if you really want to get to that next level, go find somebody on social media. That's how I found Dave. And we became good friends. And you can bounce ideas off each other, because here's the thing. Nobody goes it alone. And you need to have somebody who's on your side. Now, you don't need someone that's always going to cheer you and is going to be intimidated by, well, Dave, you shouldn't have done this, or Mark, you shouldn't have done that. You need someone who's going to actually be truthful and honest in the good times, the bad times. So go find yourself an accountability partner. You don't have to pay for someone. Dave and I don't pay each other. We're just good friends, and you need one of these people. So Dave, what do you think about accountability and masterminds of just two people?
I think it's great. You and I, as you alluded to, we don't agree on everything. We don't agree on the approach sometimes of what we choose to do. But at the same time, if we go after a particular approach or problem on how we want to use our business, I think it's safe to say both of us have gone our own directions on something and turned around and said, well, wait, Mark's doing that a little bit better than I am, or Dave's doing that a little bit better. And then we huddle up and we talk about what worked well for us, what didn't. And I can shamelessly say I have definitely taken stuff that Mark has put out there that he has seen success with, and it's benefited me. And we've learned both. There's been both cases. We've both been wrong too, but then we get to go back and decide and work together to say what of those elements should we continue to do? What do we need to tweak and drop, or do we need to start from scratch?
Just recently, I think a few days ago, before we recorded this podcast, I learned something new about email newsletter growth, and I shared it with you. And instead of you going, oh, that's a great idea, you actually implemented it. So having an accountability partner or a mastermind buddy, it's not as effective if you're just going to go, oh, that's a nice idea. You got to take the chance and implement what you've learned. And so I love sharing these things with Dave because I want him to be successful as he wants me to. You want me to be successful
Correct.
Too, right, Dave?
I do. We'll put that out there officially for everyone to hear.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, if I seem to be moving around a lot, I'm trying to stand more. So I have a standing desk. I can't stand still for too long. If you're listening to the audio, forget what I just said because it doesn't really matter. So,
and by the way, Mark, I didn't know, for any of those watching on YouTube, I didn't know today was Black Shirt Day because Mark and I are both wearing black shirts unintentionally.
Yeah. I did not send that memo out. Maybe I did in my mind. That's how you got it. Anyway, so let's talk about the time optimized life. You have a book with that title, but where I want to start on the show today is I started listening to a book called Die with Zero. And I talked to you about it, and you said you've read the book as well. And it's really got me thinking about, and one of the big tenets of the book is, why wait until you're 70, 80, 90 years old? When, like, I'm 58 years young, and I'm having the time of my life now. And I think a lot of people, they work, they save, and then they get to be 75 years old, and now they don't work anymore. Now they have this big nest egg, and they're like, oh, shoot, I can't do anything. I can't go hiking. I can't whatever, climb Mount Everest, whatever you want to do. And so I'd like to start the show on that, about people waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm like, why are you waiting? Why not live the time of your life now, regardless of your age?
Yeah, it is this false dichotomy and sense that we have. And I spend a lot of time in this space about the term retirement and the idea that traditionally people work for a particular period of time. They save and invest, and then poof, all of a sudden they head off into the sunset, living this amazing resort life with all the money that they earned. And that's a misnomer. And then also on the other side, it's those who work to save, and never leave that cycle and deny themselves these amazing, wonderful opportunities. So I'm a big proponent of having a financial strategy, something that you save for the future, but not at the expense of the present. There's this concept out there called the FIRE concept. It's financially independent, retire early. And studies and typically it's done in the tech world. So you get some young tech professional who's really good at what they do. They spend 20 years massively throwing everything into their savings to then come out of that in their 40s, start this wonderful life now, but they have no meaning and value. Mm. And then the flip side is you got the person, as we talked about, just saves and doesn't do anything with it. There's a balance in there that you can live a great life with, up until the point that we all expire.
Or I've heard the new terminology, and I don't know where this came from. You don't say dead, you say unalive. Someone's going to have to explain to me why apparently saying someone's dead is offensive, but you can say they're unalive. Dave, I can't keep up with this. I really can't keep up with it. So we're not going to go down that path, because
the unalive sounds to me like a zombie.
Exactly. Now, one of the things about the book, Die with Zero, that really fascinated with me. Now, have you read the whole book? Didn't get that.
I have not. Okay. No, I have not read the whole book, but it definitely understand it and agree with the principles.
So one of the parts of the book he talks about is people, they keep saving and living and saving and living, but people who are in their 80s and 90s are continuously saving money. And I'm like, when you're 85 years old and you've got, let's say, $100,000, $150,000 in your retirement, what are you saving for? Because unless you go crazy, like buy Lamborghinis and buy a mansion, you're probably going to have enough money to last you the end of your life. But these people have been raised, hey, you just keep saving. I mean, I'm sure your grandkids would appreciate all the money they're going to get. But I think, going back to what I said earlier, I think we need to prioritize not just our money, but what we're doing. I mean, you and I don't remember how old you are. I mean, you're not a lady, so I can ask you, how old are you, Dave?
I am 2 years older than you. I hit the sixth decade this last month. So yeah, I'm 60.
Now, how did I miss that? Oh, I did send you birthday greetings.
You did. Okay. Yes.
Okay. So I will hit 59 on June 21st this year. And I feel great. I feel like I'm in my low to mid 40s. I mean, I take really good care of myself. But I know, as an orphan, I lost my mom to Alzheimer's at age 78. I lost my dad suddenly at age 82. And here's the deal. No one gets off this planet alive unless you're one of the very fortunate people who, if you're a Christian like Dave and I are, if you are still alive when he returns, That would be the ultimate for me, or either die in my sleep. I don't want any painful death. I don't want to be crushed to death.
Fair.
I don't want to be attacked by a grizzly bear.
Fair. Longevity is a big key and something that we all need to understand. And that has to be in the equation when you do think about, die with zero is what's your longevity like? And right now we are heading into an amazing period. People are probably familiar with Netflix had this show Blue Zones.
Mm-hmm.
And then also a very popular book, Outlive, talks about the idea that our longevity is going to increase simply because of all the technological advances that are happening in the medicine field. But if people are just focused on their health more than what they are, conceivably triple digits is going to be something that's very common for us going forward.
Whenever you post something on LinkedIn that talks about longevity, I always say my goal is to live to what age, Dave?
I know, like 130 something.
Oh, 110, 130.
110.
No, 110.
Okay, 110.
Yeah.
Got it. Sorry.
So that's 110. And you did a post a couple months ago, and you said you got so much negative DMs and comments. Tell us what that poll was you asked people, and tell us a synopsis of what the negative comments were about.
Yeah, I simply asked the question, how long do you think you're going to live? And I put down some age ranges on there. And it's the most negative responses I've ever gotten on any LinkedIn post that I've done. And I don't post to be controversial. I know you don't either. You put out there what's there. I had 2 people report me to LinkedIn, and I had a variety of people in the comments tell me that I'm disgusting, how horrible that is. You shouldn't even post anymore.
Wow.
And it surprised me a lot because there wasn't any intention other than, do people think about their longevity? And as you mentioned, unless the Lord comes back, right now we're all guaranteed to expire. We're guaranteed.
So let me get into these people's heads that were really angry, who were offended, who reported you to LinkedIn. Do you think it's because they're afraid of their own mortality? Do you think it's because they're just, I don't know, Pollyanna and everything's going to go roses and they're never going to die? Why do you think, and I know this is just your conjecture, so your opinion, but why do you think some of the people reacted that way?
So, two things. The first off, I think people reacted that way because we don't talk about that first. That's not something. Now, I don't, when I'm introduced to somebody, I'm like, hey, Mark, it's great to meet you. How long are you going to live? So part of it was a shock factor. I think that people were kind of like, why is he even asking this question? I think the other thing is, what business of it is mine to do that? Maybe. But I work with clients who are headed into retirement, or what I call post-career. And I don't give up. That's front and center. One of the first things that we talk about is their longevity, because that becomes the basis for thinking about how you want to live your life, what's important to you. And I have people who tell me they're in their 70s and they think they're going to die at 75. And I'm like, why? You seem relatively healthy. Then I have others that I know who aren't healthy. Well, they don't live a good lifestyle and they think they're going to live to 95. And so it's like, okay, tell me, why is that? I'm not a health professional, so I don't get into lifestyle in the sense of what do they need to do to improve, but it's more an awareness of, why is your mindset where you're at?
That's interesting. There is something that I read in one of the Stoic books. I like reading Ryan Holiday's, The Daily Stoic. It's like a devotional. And I've also heard Robin Sharma say this, but I can't remember what the phrase is. There's a Latin phrase that back in the days of Rome, there would be the king or the leader of the country. I forget what they call him. And behind this person would be a normal person, a normal subject. And he had one job. As they went into battle, he would say the Latin phrase, remember, you're but a man. you're going to die. Remember your own mortality. I forget what the actual phrase was. And I think we need to do that. We need to realize that we are eventually going to die at some point. Now, I'm not saying you should become obsessed with it and never leave your house again and just sit in your bedroom and eating cheer with drinking some water. Okay. But I'm saying that you should be aware. And this leads into what you wrote the book about, because just because you retire at 65 or 70, because people are living longer and longer every passing day, now you're probably not going to live to the age of 969 that Methuselah lived in the Bible. I don't know if I want to live that long. That's a very long time. But I also talked to my wife. Do you think he had conversations with his kids that went along the lines of, hey, when I was 600 years old, we didn't have all these things you guys have nowadays?
Very fair. Very fair. I like to look at longevity from, and again, getting over the initial shock of not how much time you have left, but how much time you have available to do amazing things.
And those numbers are different, obviously, because you may have 30 years left, but you may only have 12 prime years, correct?
Correct. So that's where the planning comes in to say, okay, if I say I am going to live until 90 and I'm 60, I'm going to say, okay, I got 30 years left. That's a long time. It's a third of my life. Great. But then knowing that the first 15 years of those 30 years are going to be a lot different than the last 15 years. And so how do I establish a strategy around the things that I want to do that are important to me on the front end so I don't miss those out and have regrets on the back end of that particular of my life? And it's not that I fear the last 15 years. It's just no, it's a reality that I'm going to probably be physically slower, potentially cognitively slower. So what are other valuable things that I can do as I move along in life?
Well, I'm 58 right now, and June 21st, I'll be 59. My goal is 110. I actually am a daily runner, and I want to run 1 mile on my 110th birthday. It may be a slow mile, but I want to do it, which means I have 52 years to go. Now, today's point, I will not be as spry when I'm 110 as I am when I'm 59, 65. And so I'm making taking care of myself a big priority. But you said something I really want to talk about for a few minutes: regret. We've all heard the stories of the regrets of the dying. Not one of them said, I wish I would have gone to another meeting. I wish I would have created another product. They say, I wish I would have spent more time with my loved ones and my friends and doing things that would help people be happy. Well, if you know this, and we all know this in our heart, we all know this, why aren't we doing anything about this now? Why are we like, well, I'm busy, got to work. Some people work wall to wall. They have no time for rest and they're miserable. And I'm like, if you know the regrets of the dying, why are you not changing the way you live now when you can do something about it instead of waiting until your final days or hours on your deathbed?
So I want to go back. I love to answer that. I want to go back and first of all, just reiterate the fact that you said you're going to live to be 110. For those listening or watching, that is not out of the realm of possibility at all, particularly as we continue to see, as I said, advancements in technology. So I just, for somebody who's like, that could be and is not outside of the realm, to go back to your regret situation in that perspective, people do have, I have regrets. There are times I wish I would have spent more times with my kids. I can go back in my life, but I don't want to wallow in that. What I want to do is to say, okay, now that maybe I can't change the past, I can definitely shape my future. And that future then says what's important to me. And I think too many people today, they split their personal life from their professional life.
Yeah.
I got my professional life. I'm working here. I'm doing this. And then I flip this switch or I walk through this threshold and I'm now in my personal life. I try to tell everybody those two need to be linked, because you need to place as much emphasis on what's important to you personally in whatever productivity strategy, if you're working with Mark, or time management strategy, if you're working with me. The professional and the personal should be treated as one.
I love that, because you and I both work from home. So it's not like your business day in your office and personal day when you walk out of the office, you're the same person. And I think we think it's black and white, but it's actually a gray area. When are you actually working? Because you're just like me. You may be shopping with your wife, and, guys don't like to go shopping. So we may be sitting there going through X or LinkedIn or Instagram. And so we're technically working because we're actually giving value. So it's not really, I'm on the clock, I'm off the clock. I mean, you should have office hours. I talk about that a lot, but the reality is it's not black and white. And you mentioned, doing things you love to do. And I'm a big football fan. And just clarification, that's not American football. It's European football. We call it soccer in the States. Well, I will actually program my days around football. So during the tournament time, there's games on during the day. Now, I don't watch any other sport. So it takes 2 hours. I sit down and watch the game. Now, some people go, well, that's not being really productive. And I said, well, first of all, you can't judge me. You don't know how much work I've done. I get up between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. So by the time the game time is at 2 o'clock, I've got a ton of work done. And so I think if you enjoy doing something, it could be, I'm going to go for an afternoon walk every day at 2 o'clock. Then program your day around that. Put that on your schedule. Like I put my football games on my schedule. Put them on your schedule. You shouldn't work, in my opinion, work all the time. So if you and your wife want to go out for lunch, you can, because you both work from home. And I think it's important that people understand that we all have the same 24 hours in a day. And if you're just going to be focused on, this is when I'm working, this is when I'm a dad or a husband, I think you're going to be missing a lot of opportunities to help other people and to bring joy into your own life.
It's one of the reasons why, as you were explaining things, I am not a fan necessarily of the term work-life balance, because I feel balance, it takes a lot of effort to stay in balance. If you're try to keep water level, that's really hard to do that. And so I prefer the flexibility, and leaning into what you just said. This idea that, okay, somebody who's in a traditional job, working corporate life right now, they're probably thinking, Mark, I don't have the time to watch European football at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm busy powering through a busy day. And that's where I challenge people to say, then what are you doing to establish this work-life flexibility? And I feel that's relationship capital that you need to build on both sides, that professional and personal side. On the personal side, you need to be able to tell your family, sometimes I've got to dive into and spend a lot more time at work this week because I got this big project that needs to be done. At the same time, in the professional side, you need to be pushing with your employer that says, because you're performing well, that says, hey, next Thursday at 3 o'clock, my kid has a recital at school. I need to be there. And you hopefully have built up enough relationship capital that the boss says, great, go have it. So to me, it's building in the flexibility that allows you to lean into that when you need to.
I love that. And as you were talking, I thought about something I did about a year ago that people have been telling me for 5 years, and that's to get someone else to cut my lawn. So I had this mentality, I'll save money and I'll cut my own lawn. Well, what I didn't realize is I had to maintain the lawnmower, cut the lawn, get all sweaty, rake, which I hate raking. And now I have this guy who is awesome, does a better job than I ever could have done. He loves doing it. He takes such pride in his work. So I pay the guy $40 every 2 weeks. He comes out and cuts my lawn. And when he's out there cutting my lawn, I'm doing things I love to do. That could be watching football, could be creating content, creating an episode of the podcast, coaching a client. So I am not a lawn guy. he is a really good lawn guy. And sometimes you can go, well, you know what? I'm doing all this cleaning my house on Saturdays. Let me go make a phone call or do some Google searches. How much would it cost to have someone clean my house every week? And you're like, oh, wow, we can afford this. And all of a sudden you have this person comes in, cleans your house. Now you're free to do those fun things. So I think a lot of people, they don't do the research. They just assume, oh, I could never afford it. Have you priced it? Have you talked to anybody about it? And more often than not, David, I hear people say, no, I've never priced it. Then how do you know? Maybe, even if it's on the pricey side, maybe you go, you know what? I think us investing in someone to clean our house once a week is worth it for our family. That's an investment in our family. I think if you spin it and look at it that way, now you're not looking at how much money's going out. You're looking at how much joy you can have as a result of investing in someone cleaning your house or cutting your lawn or doing your shopping for you.
It is all about the choices. You can go back. Time is money, so to speak. And so you have that value that says, is this value of this time, worth it for me to spend the $40 every 2 weeks? And of course, in your case, I having cut many yards, everything you said takes time. And so you could, in effect, depending on the size of the yard, you might spend half a day on Saturday in there. And by the time you're done, you're tired. Mm-hmm. And so really that could be saving you 5 to 7 hours a week of really important time you could do, valuable time doing other activities. Mm-hmm. It's all the choices you want to make.
And not to mention, this guy loves what he does. I mean, mm-hmm. when you see our lawn after he gets done cutting it, he takes pride in his work. So not only am I saving myself the wear and tear of my body from doing it, I'm actually financially blessing him because I'm paying him to cut my lawn. So it's not like he's doing it for free. A going rate is $40 for a lawn in Houston. So I'm paying the going rate. The guy's awesome. But I look at it and I love how you said work-life flexibility. So by having him cut my lawn or listener or viewer, you have someone clean your house once a week. Maybe you can't do it every week. Maybe you do it every other week or maybe once a month. That's going to free up time for you to spend with your kids. You can go to the park when they're done, or you can, have family day. You just play games and watch videos all day. These people cleaning your houses are not doing it because they have to. Some of them do, but a lot of them do it because they actually love doing it. I remember a number of years ago when my family and I used to go to Disney World all the time, and you talk to the wait staff or the house clean staff. And if you talk to them, they're not like forced to do that job. They love doing that job. So by you saying, oh, don't clean my room, you should, that's what they're getting paid for. And you can thank them if they do a good job, giving them a tip. So these people, you assume that it's a job beneath them, but they may actually love it. So use these people who are doing what they love to do and would do a better job than you and I could do. And then you can bless them by giving them employment. And then you get to take that time and spend time doing something you really love to do.
Yeah. Again, all if it fits within your budget and your understanding of how you're going to manage your finances, then that, if you can, that investment of money can afford you greater flexibility to, again, do the things that are important to you that maybe you haven't even thought about.
I want to go back to, you talked about the blue zones. You talked about Outlive. I encourage everyone to read the book Outlive. It'll take you 7 years because the book is a doorstop.
It's a big book.
They talk about a phrase called, see if I can remember this, escape velocity of longevity. I believe that's what it says. They believe we're getting to the point really close where it's going to be common for people to live to 100, 110, 120, 130. And this ties in with your book, The Time Optimized Life. If you retire at 70, and because we don't know when we're going to die, only God knows when we're going to die. And let's say you retire at 70 and you're going to live to 110. That's 40 years. You can only play so much golf. You can only go so much shopping. You could, what are you going to do? And My parents retired at 55. They're both deceased now, but then they moved to Florida, where you are, and they went to work for Disney World for 10 years or 15 years. They retired because they couldn't stand being home all the time. So you think, I'll have 40 years to do whatever I want. But like you said earlier, you're going to lose some of your flexibility and mobility as you get older. But let's say you have 20 good years. What are you going to do with those 20 good years? And I don't think people talk about that. They don't think about it. They never have a plan. They're like, I can't wait to retire. Then they retire and they're like, uh-oh. And a lot of people, you probably know the stats better than I do. There's a significant amount of people who die within years, and correct me if I'm wrong, after retiring because they're bored. They have what are they going to do every day?
So let me speak to that a little bit, because there is definitely some data that indicates that someone who retires early at 62, that there is a small percentage of them who pass away much earlier than the traditional person who waits to 65. However, underneath all of that is when we're working and we're diving into and we're living it through our careers, we have a tendency to be focused on that, and we can power through if we're feeling lethargic. We can power through if we have the aches and the pains. What typically happens to that person at 62 is they retire, and guess what? They all focus on, wow, my chest hurts, or my arm hurts, or my leg. And then they end up going to the doctor and they find out they have serious medical issues going on. So a lot of that is tied to that. What I, again, push people on is the reason why I named the book The Time Optimized Life is I am not a fan of, I guess I keep all these phrases I'm not a fan of, but I'm not a fan of time management. That phrase, because, and again, nothing to managers. It's not about a position, but the word manage is usually reactive. It's something happens. I got to go manage this, what happens. Whereas to me, optimize is more proactive. I'm trying to think ahead, and we're not going to get everything laid out perfect in our life. But the more you flip that attitude that says, I'm proactively going to try to address what I'm doing with my time to minimize me having to react to other people's demands of my time. And so that's where, regardless of your age, but particularly if you head into retirement, this is where you need to be really proactive on what you're going to do, because you have a whole lot more consumable time when you're out of a career than you are if you're in a career.
The things I'm a big fan of, and we've talked about this several times on our calls, is I love journaling. And I don't use an app. I use an actual print journal. And you said something just now that it made me think about this. We don't spend time thinking about what we want to do tomorrow, next week, next quarter, next year, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the road. We wait until that day gets here. And I want to encourage people, you don't have to go get a fancy journal. Just go get a piece of paper, go someplace quiet. Don't be on your phone. Don't do it in front of the TV. And just, what do I want in my future? And just allow the stream of consciousness just to come out of your subconscious mind onto the page. And you're like, oh, I could do this next year. I'm not really, that's going to cost too much money. This is going to be like 10 years down the road, because we keep all these ideas in our head. And then we get to a point where maybe we're physically not able to do anything. And we go, oh man, goes back to the regrets again. I wish I would have gone horseback riding before I had this bum knee. Well, if you would have sat down and go, what do I want to do? Like you said, think about what you want to do. I think so many people are so reactive. Like you mentioned about the word management. So many people are reactive instead of being proactive. Think about, what do you want to do? Don't think about the money. Everybody starts with the money. Well, I would love to go to Paris. Too expensive. Don't start there. Tony Robbins says, where there's a will, there's a way. It's not a question of resources. It's a question of resourcefulness. So if you really want to go to Paris with your family, you may not be able to go for 3 years, but how can you save up for it? So I believe in starting with the positive. But I really encourage people to give themselves the time to sit down. Maybe you start with yourself first, then you include your family, including your kids, and go, what do you want to do as a family? Because you kids are, 9 and 10 years old. What do you want to do before you graduate high school? Get their input, but do it proactively. And I think that's what you're getting at is instead of just like, well, whatever happens, happens. Let me think about what do I want to happen with the rest of my life?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of goal setting, not hyper, because I think you need flexibility. Mm-hmm. But in my case, as I work with clients, I first encourage to do a purpose statement. What is your purpose in life? What gets you up during the day? And if it is simply, I'm getting up to go to work every day, I don't think that's a purpose statement, because I think it needs to be encompass, again, both professional and personal life, really more on the personal. And then once you decide what that purpose statement is, I love what you talked about, just writing down all those aspirational goals. You can call it a bucket or a vision list, but those are all the things, and you need to have fun with them. Mm-hmm. Figure out things that you wouldn't even consider doing. That's crazy. I can't do that. Put it down anyways. Then that bucket list becomes the thought starters, the creative thinking that you can do. Then you pull items off of those and you're like, you know what? I think I'm going to try this. And you move it over to what I call a long-term goal, and that's 2 to 4 years. That's where you start putting skin in the game to say, I know what this is going to cost me. I know if I've got to save for this. I know if I need to do this. And then eventually, if it still isn't of scale, then that turns into an annual goal, because you're like, I'm doing it this year. I'm in a position that I can do that. That becomes an annual goal. And then finally, the last act is the late breaking things between 3 to 6 months that pop up into your life. That's like, ooh, I got a chance to go to Hawaii. I'm going to go to Hawaii. Hadn't planned for it. You throw it in there. And all of that is a continuous process that flows. You might have a long-term goal that goes back on the bucket list. You might have a bucket list item that becomes a short-term goal, but it's all a continuous process.
It's a living document because you'll move things from one category to another category. One thing I want to caution people on, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this, is be careful who is giving you opinions on what you want. I don't care if the goal is big or it's small. So one of my big things I like to do is I only fly first class. I am not wealthy. Okay. I don't have sports cars. I don't go buy the new Air Jordans. My iPhone's 3 years old, but my wife and I, before my mom and dad passed away, we were going to go visit them. And she goes, well, do you want to go fly first class? I said, yes. And I said, I will only fly first class from here on out. Now, the exception is when my father died suddenly, couldn't get a first class ticket. But you'd be amazed at me, or maybe you wouldn't be, Dave. People said, why are you flying first class? I'm like, first of all, I'm like, well, you didn't pay for it. So why do you care? Second of all, one person said they had like 3 really expensive cars. Like, your thing is cars. You bought them. That's fine. So whether you want to fly first class, you want to stay at a 5-star hotel once a month as a, date weekend, don't let other people put you down. Don't let those people who commented on Dave's LinkedIn poll get in your head. If you and your wife or you and your family want to do this, you want to go all out to Disney World or all out to Universal, then go all out. Don't let other people go, oh, that's a waste of money. You know what they represent? Listen, it's what you want to do. I think so many people are scared, and you know me, Dave. I'm very open on social media. I'll tell the good, ugly, the bad, the different, whatever, because I want to live my life. The stranger who's following me on social media or listening to this podcast, I really appreciate their time and attention, but you don't have as much weight as my wife and my kids do. And I got to feel I know you well enough that you feel the same way.
Yeah, I think what ultimately comes from the result of the time we invest is the memories that get created from that. And there's a value to that to me. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to travel first class, don't blame me there, Mark, because in my corporate days, I flew a lot. And when I could get an upgrade to first class, I took it and enjoyed it. So, but in that particular area there, you kind of say, okay, I'm going to spend more on this ticket because the time I'm going to get in that experience is going to generate a positive memory for me, which then all of that plays into, I don't want to tie it to a first class ticket, but when you tie it to other things that let's say a deep trip, something that means a whole lot to you, that equation of the time, the money equals the memory becomes very important.
I'm a little sad that first class people don't get on first anymore. First, it's the people who have disabilities. I don't have a problem with that. Then the little kids, and then people who are active military, but not former military. So all these people, 1K mileage, all these people, like I'm one of the last people get on the plane. I'm like, what's happening right now? Now, the one benefit of flying first class, you get the bigger seats. You can have all you can eat and drink. You get your own overhead, so you don't have to worry about that. But first time I flew first class, I've only flown twice, by the way, so I'm not like I'm flying first class every week. And I told my wife, I'm like, we're first class. Why are we getting on the plane 8? I mean, the whole lobby is empty. I'm like, there's something wrong with this picture here. But I really enjoyed. So I want to ask you this one question because, like I said, you have the time optimized life. If people only passively listened or watched this episode, what is one piece of information, it could be from your book or something you teach your clients, that you want to make sure people don't miss as a result of you being on the show today?
The idea of time optimization follows 3 main criteria. The first one is what I call it's preparation. You've got to prepare, whether it's a task, an activity, an event, something that's going to take up a duration of your time. And as much as you can, you need to prepare. Then the second thing is, once you've got your preparation set, you begin to execute against that preparation. So if it's in the business world or the personal world, you start to do what you prepared for. Then the third element is you control what it is, the outcome that you're desiring from that. Now, the thing about that is that's not linear. There's a relationship between all 3 so that I prepare, I start to execute. And if I find that I'm not executing well, I go back to preparation and I do some more preparation. If I find I'm executing, but not to the level that I think I am, then I kick in the control to say, I have got to be more disciplined to get to this outcome. And then if I find I'm not controlling events well, then I need to say, do I need to go back and start to refocus on my execution, or even go back all the way to preparation and redo it? So the 3 work together. I call it a triune relationship. For those of us who are Christians, we have a triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. To me, preparation, execution, and control is a triune relationship that continuously you work through and work at to have the best productive outcome that you can.
And notice what he said, you continuously work on it. So probably as long as you're breathing air, this is something you're going to keep on working on, which is great. It's a good thing. So Dave, where can people go to find out more about you, what you're doing, your book, all that good stuff? Where can we go?
Thanks, Mark. So first, I would just say you can go to Infinity Lifestyle Design. That's one word, infinitylifestyledesign.com. Go to the first page. You'll see all the stuff I can offer you. But then also, the Time Optimized Life is available wherever basically you can buy books online, and it'll be in, I know Books A Million, and other national chains. But it's right now, if you buy it on Amazon, it is available in the paperback and Kindle. And then if you buy from Barnes and Noble, it's available on paperback and e-reader. And then I'm working on doing an audible version of it. So, but just, you can pick it up wherever fine books are stored or are sold.
I tried to convince Dave to let me do my Johnny Jocko impersonation to read his book, and he talked to his wife, and that's That's not Dave's brand. That's Mark's brand. But I used to be a radio DJ. For those of you who don't know, I used to be a radio DJ. And whenever I get into my Johnny Jocko modes, my wife says, oh, there it is again. There he is again. So
Yes.
I really appreciate you being on the show. Hey, listen, before y'all leave, don't forget to head on over to MrProductivity.com. Sign up for my free email newsletter, The Productive Life. Get some free training from me and get productivity tips every week. MrProductivity.com. All right, Dave, I'm going to hit stop and hopefully the world doesn't blow up.
Okay.
So hang on just a second here. Okay, click.